Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're going to be talking about living spiritually with the paranormal. This is an interesting topic and it kind of goes into some of the gray areas where we do not have a lot of information revealed within the Rancho book, so a lot of it has to do with interpretation and opinions. So it's very interesting, that subject. Today's topic, it's that we're stepping into an era where many people have experienced things but almost never talks about it. It's the paranormal. Dreams that come true, visions you can't explain, encounters that challenge everything you thought you knew about reality. But this episode isn't about sensational stories, it's about something much deeper. How to stay spiritually grounded when the unexplained enters your life. Susan Lyon, my guest, has spent more than 4 decades studying the teachings of the Rancho book while navigating extraordinary experiences with calm, practical faith. Today we explore how free will, friendship with God, and a life of service can keep us centered even in a universe far stranger and more beautiful than we imagined. So welcome, Susan. It's a pleasure as always to have you here.
Thank you, Santiago. It's good to be here. You're
Great.
exclusively the one that gets the interview on this, nobody else.
Good, good. No, yeah, it's an interesting topic. So we're gonna go diving in into different segments. But to begin us off and to start us off to this, we're gonna talk about free will, boundaries, and friendship with God. Spiritual boundaries. Let's begin with this because it's a foundation. Because when strange or unexplained experiences enter our lives, the first question isn't what happened. It's who is in charge of your inner world. The Rancho book teaches that we are free will creatures, and that means that we have the authority over our spiritual experience. The paranormal doesn't get to run our household, and in this segment, Susan will explore how a deep friendship with God becomes the anchor that keeps us grounded, allowing us to face mystery without fear and without losing our center. So tell us about this, anchoring and this setting of boundaries within the paranormal, Susan.
Well, back in 1978, when I found the Urantia book, I I had this conversion experience. I was I felt like a born again Christian, but I
Mm-hmm.
had this powerful experience that I believe was, engaging or connecting with the spirit of truth at that point, that at a level I had never felt before.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, that was the beginning of the realization of needing to, work within for that peace and that calm. And, I was on fire to go out and share, the gospel, the Urantia book with everyone immediately. And I got a lot of pushback, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helped me. It was the beginning of a journey of how to manage faith and a realization that the faith religion is just a relationship with God, that it was within, that power of the spirit within maybe isn't always to be shared with others in a way that they can understand. And I think that's why I've lived all these years without really talking about a lot of this that's gone on.
Mm-hmm.
But I set the boundaries to try to share where I can, but I've kept a lot of this to myself. But good friends that we have recommended that you really, for your own best health and practices, need to confide in others that you trust and that
Mm-hmm.
you need to share and peel back, be able to share the memory or whatever it is that with at least a few. And it's healthier that way, that you're not holding it all within. So part of this is a journey for me personally, health wise,
Mm-hmm.
to release some of that that I haven't shared with others, and then just like put it to rest, because some of
Well,
the stuff is you feel, that has happened is odd. You feel it's odd, but that I still have to believe a lot of other people have shared experiences they're probably not talking about either. And if we knew how much that we're really being opened up to new understanding and expanding consciousness, we wouldn't
yeah.
fear. And that's my goal, is that to talk with you today mostly is that it's not to be feared, that there's a lot that we call paranormal that might actually be normal as we're opening up our hearts to the spirit, as we're opening up and expanding consciousness. The
Yeah.
boundaries that you asked about basically are that the relationship with God, my growth
Mm-hmm.
on terms that I feel comfortable with and safe with. I don't, go further than I feel comfortable or safe with. And it's been a growth, a gradual growth, not anything crazy or not seeking out fantastic experiences. These things just kind of happen, and you know, I take them as a normal religious
Yeah.
person and try to keep it, sane. I'm not looking for.
And we're gonna go dive into some of your experiences. You're gonna tell us about them, but I mean, just to sum up of what you're saying about setting the boundaries and confiding with God, and really trusting in God as the anchor.
Right.
That's really important. I mean, a lot of the different. I mean, nowadays, and even when I was a kid, it was interesting. My dad thought I was crazy because when the college fair used to go to my high school, I would go to I mean, to any of the booths, and it was the same as you have in the States. It was, all the U.S. colleges that showed up there, and I would ask about parapsychology because I wanted to be, a ghost investigator. So I really love the subject, and I think it's really interesting. And I one of the things that it's important to talk about, and we're going to go in there in a minute because I think it's setting boundaries. Think with people, not talking about them and keeping to yourself, and just with people that's the human, but also the setting boundaries or the setting limits with the paranormal, whatever it is that it's outside.
Mhm.
So because you see a lot of examples, and we don't have a clear definition or. I mean, we do have the evil we cannot, or the evil spirits cannot come into us, or if we do not let them, and then they cannot invade us. But then we have all the things about the exorcism and all that. So it's an interesting take on how that works. But tell us, how about setting boundaries outside, in the physical world and in the spiritual world.
Well, I think I told you before about a friend who has told me that they have like angels that will come in and, smack them
Okay.
in the head, wake them up. So get busy and work and do service stuff. And I had to say, I think that in my mind, that is a boundary that I set is in our philosophy, we kind of believe that, our thought adjuster, our indwelling spirit works with us at night, mostly when we're asleep. And so, and during the day, the angels and midwares or whoever else might contribute to our growth. And
Mm-hmm.
so in my mind, I told this friend, I said, "Hey, why would you allow that? Why would you let some, like angels or whatever come in your bedroom at night and wake you up from your sleep? There's nothing that I mean, obviously what we do or we try to do to serve is important, but we also need a good night's sleep and we need, common sense." And so I've joked with Rick before and I make sure that, they all hear. And I don't think of them as being evil or anything, but they just know that, my room at night is off limits. There's nobody that's going to come in and bother me when I'm sleeping. That's the adjuster's time. That's the time my indwelling
Yeah.
spirit to teach me or reach me, and nobody else needs to bother. And if they do want to contact me, and they haven't yet, but they need to catch me when I'm dressed, and then maybe they could
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
or something. But they need to treat me like normal. It's normal boundaries, just like we would with anybody else. It's like,
Okay.
you know, honestly, we live in an age when we don't see them. But in future ages, we're told the vision is expands and we're more aware of them being around. We know spirits are around, we know angels are around, but we're
Yeah.
we're guarded from seeing them so we can live a normal life and relax. Because, if we saw them all
Exactly.
around and we knew we were being watched every minute, we wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I don't know how well
No,
we would do it.
definitely.
Right. So I treat them just like, okay, we know you're there, but there are boundaries. And this is my religious experience with the Father. And I'm empowered by the Spirit of truth. That's my, companion, my Jesus, my Holy Spirit, the Mother Spirit is those are my trio of constant companions. And the rest, they work for me, but that doesn't mean they have right to come in my room and wake me up at night. That's not
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, and I think I mean in your case it's I mean you're talking about good spirits, that you're
Right.
just setting boundaries, and but a lot of people that might not have your spiritual progress or evolution or your stage might fall into letting other spirits, other agencies, come into their life. So how it's important to always keep centering, like you said, going to the thought adjuster, which is that's really your guide, that's really your compass inside, and it's you're never spiritually alone, even in the strangest moments, and it's really being there, using that guide, and knowing that you have your space, you have your autonomy, and nothing can invade. Not even God can go and change your mind, or go and do that. So no other being can invade your space. Let's
I
call it
yeah,
that way.
I feel you're right about that, and I would even call it a safe space because I'm not progressive or anything like
No.
that spiritually, but I 100% believe I'm safe from evil spirits because
Yeah.
I believe that that trio of spirit beings that we just talked about give me that shield of safety, give me that
Yeah.
protection. That you have to remember anyone that's an evil spirit, that is a rebel spirit, doesn't have an indwelling spirit of God like we do.
Yeah.
I don't believe, unless you would invite that, that they could possibly approach us even. So, I feel we're safe.
Yeah.
Others
Yeah.
might not have that confidence, but I do have that confidence.
That's very
100%.
important. That's very
Yeah.
important, and that's always. I mean, keeping and evil at bay. That's always important. So, Susan, one of the things that I mean, that's part of the interesting part of this conversation is what kind of activities did you go through where that you realized that you were having that others weren't, and what was your first instinct? What happened? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, let me first say that one of the first experiences I ever had was more a realization of experiences I was having that most other people have. And that
Hmm.
was my first real recognized instance of deja vu, what we would call deja vu,
Okay.
precognition. And that was in eighth grade. And I don't have anything I really remember before that, but I walked into a classroom and a substitute teacher was there in the place of a favorite teacher who had gone out sick. And I remember it being shocked to see, someone different there, concerned. But at the same time, I had this overwhelming feeling that I had seen it before or lived it before. You know how you feel with deja vu? It's like wham, you get this feeling that you know you've been there before. Well,
Yeah.
obviously you haven't. You know that, so you know you've seen it somehow before. And I really believe that when you're asleep, we're in the Urantia book philosophy, it teaches us that with spirit, mind can transcend time. And so I
Okay.
believe that a lot of what we might call a dream is really a glimpse of maybe the super consciousness that we're not aware of. That
Definitely.
and the indwelling spirit is eternal, has no time boundaries. And so the eternal spirit, that fragment of God that lives within us, knows the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah.
And so, for one glimpse, if they've made contact, you might have seen something from the future. And that is what I believe everyone shares. I mean, I don't know anybody that has never had a deja vu experience. Just a brief blink of time that you think, I feel this is familiar. I've seen this before. And so that's my shared thing where I almost think it's proof of the indwelling spirit, because without that spirit, we couldn't see the future. Our mind couldn't do that.
That's interesting to that theory, and I like it because yeah, definitely. I mean, if we're talking about that spirit lives within perfection in a timeless universe, then it makes sense that if we're making contact, you get these glimpses of perfection where there's no time, and you get those glimpses of both the future and the past. And I have had couple of more than a couple of experiences of dreams that really come true. They don't come true, exactly how you dream them, because even dreams are always kind of crazy. But meeting a certain person, some
Mhm.
certain things happening exactly, I mean that name, that situation, that person. I mean, it's not. I mean, beyond a coincidence. It's just that, and it's and it was recently that I kind of mapped out and maybe two or three of them really were transcendental to my life. It was meeting someone that actually, that person, I saw the sequence, got me to introduce me to where eventually I got to get to know about the Rancher book. So see that sequence within your dreams. And I think it's maybe it's something that it's intentional, and it's not just something accidental, that they want you to get that imprint so that you can have that as a something in your mind. And sometimes you maybe you don't forget. I mean, you dream about it, but suddenly when it happens, it just comes all back to to life.
Right. It's funny that you usually forget those, usually,
Yeah.
until, or in my case anyway, until it actually happens. And then you get that feeling of, okay, I know you recognize that you've seen it before. Because a lot of times it happens with the same words, the same situation, the same room, the same person, the same everything matches exactly what you've seen before. And then
Yeah.
you know it's been a preview. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's like a hidden truth or hidden information there that just pops up. So it's a interesting situation. So
Yeah.
let's before we continue with the rest of your experiences, we're gonna end this segment here and keep watching for the rest of the paranormal situations that Susan has experienced and the explanation she has for them. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.